Whenever Nintendo releases a new console, the question that usually comes up next is what the new Mario Kart will look like. From the N64 to the Nintendo Switch, many people question what new tracks are going to be added to the game, or what new modes and items will change the experience this time. But this hasn't always been the case. Racing games weren't as much of a mainstay as they are now, but back in the early 90s, with the increase in popularity of console gaming, Nintendo created one of, if not their most successful franchises. Based on a spin-off of their mascot character Mario, Super Mario Kart came speeding into the scene. With the new game mechanics and gameplay, many consider this to be the birth of the mascot kart racer. Not only did Nintendo create a new genre, but they also pushed the power of their most modern console at the time, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Super Mario Kart made its way to becoming one of the best-selling games on the console, along with becoming a gateway for many people to get into gaming. Now, the idea to create a kart racer didn't just pop out of thin air. Originally, the developers wanted to build a game that contrasted against the high-speed single-player racing game F-Zero. This game is a futuristic, high-speed racing game based on the Formula 1 style of racing. But the team felt that with multiple players on the screen, the high-speed feeling would diminish. Instead, they want to focus more on the multiplayer aspect of racing, which led them to designing simpler tracks. This emphasis on the multiplayer portion of the game can be seen clearly with the layout of the single-player mode, as half the game is covered with a large detailed map. While pretty neat and useful at the time, this also leads to the main part of the game, the actual racing, being squished into the top half of the screen. And with how pixelated many games in the SNES are, you can tell how Super Mario Kart might be hard to decipher on certain maps, and in some cases, pretty disorienting. One question that can be brought up is how the developers of this new kart racing game added their main mascot into the series. Now, during the first prototypes of the game, they made the main playable character wear overalls, but after a couple of months of development, they wanted to incorporate some new elements into the game. They wanted for a car to fly by you and see who it was that overtook you or who you overtook. And in that moment, instead of creating more new characters for this new game, they decided how it would look like if it was Mario in that kart. From then on, that idea stuck, leaving them with a Mario Kart racing game. With the overall structure of the game being complete, the developers wanted to add some modes to the game. What came about were the two main modes found in all Mario Kart games. Now, the main mode would be the racing mode, the Grand Prix, but they wanted to add to it with the battle mode. The director of the game, Hideaki Kono, stated that the game would serve as a good communication tool, where players would be able to go head-to-head on one-on-one battles to pop each other's balloons with various power-ups. They wanted for players to fight against each other instead of competing for ranks. Encompassing all these new ideas was how they were going to package this game. Now, we should realize that during this era, 3D games were pretty much unknown. No console at this time was able to process complex three-dimensional polygons in order to produce some sort of functional and playable game. While the next generation of game consoles had the ability to create these 3D graphics and worlds, those consoles were still years ahead. Instead, the SNES used a different approach. One of the main positives of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System was its ability to produce breathtaking, although crude, 3D visuals. Utilizing the Mode 7 graphics technique, the SNES was able to change the background layers of the game in a way to create depth. The main idea behind the Mode 7 graphics was the ability to rotate and scale the background layers using affine transformations. This means that instead of changing the entire frame each time, we can tweak and change the single background in order to show it in a more 3D way. While this means that no actual 3D graphics were produced, these rudimentary graphics showed signs of the coming rise of 3D gaming. They showed a more realistic way to play games. While there were large steps that took place in the programming sphere of Super Mario Kart's development, the storytelling portion of the game was pretty bare bones. There isn't really a story in this game. Pretty much many of the important Mario characters in the game's past had a spot on the roster. Everyone seemed to have put their differences aside and decided to have a blast throwing fireballs and Koopa shells at each other in these courses. Now, the main gameplay on Super Mario Kart is to race around a track for a certain amount of laps and try to finish first. There are two ways to play Super Mario Kart, either in single player or two players. The main mode that can be played with up to two players is the Mario Kart Grand Prix. Either 6 or 7 CPU racers try to get first in a 5-course cup. The player will start out in 8th place and is then tasked with making their way to first. If a player doesn't finish in the top 4 of a race, they'll lose a life, with 3 losses ending the run completely. Now, if you do lose a race before all your lives are up, you can still try again and retry the track. The player who gains the most points by the end of the 5 races is crowned the winner of the Grand Prix. The other main single player mode is the time trial, where the player needs to race as fast as possible around a track 5 times. Each track time is then added together and is then the goal to beat the next time you play the track. Along with these single player modes, the multiplayer modes are both the match race and battle mode. First, the match race mode is where the player can race around any chosen track with bullet bills flying around you trying to hit the player. While this is much more of a minor mode, the next game mode in Mario Kart is what most people seem to love in the games that followed. Battle mode in Super Mario Kart is where 2 players can duke it out in racing combat, where each player's goal is to eliminate the opposing player's 3 lives, which are shown as balloons. Through the use of throwing items, this mode is much more toned down compared to the other games in this series. Now that we got the modes out of the way, how do we actually move in this game? Well, much of the movement is pressing the B button to accelerate, while we can use the A button to use the items and the shoulder buttons to drift. Yes, in this game, we are able to drift in order to make use of these hairpin turns that are found all across the tracks. Although drifting in this game is much less forgiving than in other Mario Karts. The CPUs are also less forgiving as they're able to match the player when they're in the top positions or regain speed and momentum when they fall behind. Now the characters in Super Mario Kart are also pretty lean, but they do have some variety along with some franchise favorites. The 8 characters are Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, Bowser, Donkey Kong Jr., that's right, not Donkey Kong but his kid, and finally Koopa Troopa and Toad, with Lakitu overseeing each race. One interesting thing about each of these racers is that each pair of drivers have different stats, handling, acceleration, and speed. Each of these races takes place in 20 courses in the pure racing mode, which are then split into 4 different cups: the Mushroom, Flower, Star, and Special Cup. Although one thing that is a bit annoying is that many of the courses are just the same course theme with different layouts, which is comparatively boring since that lowers the actual amount of differing courses down to just a handful. At the beginning of each of the races, there are small question pads, where if the racer runs over them, they're granted a single special item, ranging from different colored shells to throw at your enemies, mushrooms, bananas, and feathers which can make you jump. In some of the courses, there might be obstacles or enemy NPCs that are trying to get in your way. While the race courses are much more in-depth in their track design and the amount of tracks themselves, the battle mode is fairly sparse, with only 4 courses to choose from. Super Mario Kart was released on August 27th, 1992 in Japan, September 1st, 1992 in North America, and PAL versions of the game came later on January 21st, 1993. This game was a massive success, both with how people received the game as well as the units sold, with the game selling 8.76 million units worldwide. The game shot up to the 4th best-selling game on the SNES. Across the globe, from when the game was released to years later, the game was still a consistent bestseller for the SNES. During the early 90s, reviewers lauded the game's use of the Mode 7 graphics, along with its addictive gameplay. Many people still place this game above many of its successors, which I think is where this game's main legacy lies. Super Mario Kart is credited with the creation of the kart racing genre of video games. With its commercial success and large popularity, many other game studios tried to capitalize on that craze. Nintendo's longtime rival Sega tried to jump on the bandwagon with the release of their mascot kart racer Sonic Drift. Many other mascot kart racers soon followed, whether it was from Ubisoft, Atari, or even Nintendo with Diddy Kong Racing. While the sheer volume of these mascot kart racers grew, many of their critical responses have been fairly middling, with most people feeling that these games haven't cracked the Mario Kart secret formula. While others tried to copy the kart racer, Nintendo found a new formula. They realized that Mario didn't have to actually be stuck as a plumber jumping on platforms, but instead could be used in different spin-off games. Many of these titles were still based on sports, like Mario Golf and Mario Tennis on the N64, but other titles, based more on the party appeal, got a spotlight. Games like Mario Party soon became franchises themselves, adding to Mario's role in party games, like the new party fighting game Super Smash Bros. On the N64. With the diversification of Mario throughout the years, it led to many of the main platforming games becoming more special. These spin-offs gave developers much more breathing room to build larger and better mainline Mario games. Now, Super Mario Kart wasn't forgotten in all of these new franchise creations, as the game itself has gotten re-released multiple times, from the Virtual Console on the Wii and Wii U and 3DS, to newer consoles like the Nintendo Switch. Now, many of the tracks in Super Mario Kart have also been remade and modernized for newer Mario Kart games. Speaking of the new Mario Kart games, that was one of the biggest changes for Nintendo, the creation of the Mario Kart franchise. Starting with the SNES, almost every single console had a new Mario Kart. With the first sequel of Super Mario Kart 64, the game started pushing what the console each game was released on could do. With Mario Kart 64, not only were they able to create a 3D kart racer, they also increased the multiplayer count from 2 players players on the SNES to 4 players on the N64. For each successful new game in the series, the Mario Kart games would be able to take advantage of the console's unique features. Super Mario Kart lit a torch that still burns bright to this very day, with each subsequent game in the series being a commercial success compared to its console. This game created the pattern of utilizing the unique features to showcase a console's power that the designers and the programmers had at their disposal. From Mode 7 graphics and fake 3D to real 3D and 4-player co-op, all of these things started with a simple game with a complicated development history. Super Mario Kart set the road that current Mario Karts still race along. This has been the history of Super Mario Kart by Nintendo. Thanks for watching. If you want another video about a best-selling game, you can click here to watch the history of Minecraft, and click here to subscribe.